but we're gonna stretch our imagination for the sake of murder, right? I had no idea there were so many Welsh people in North Carolina. Why don't we try something potentially illegal? Hi everyone. So before we dive into the kind of light academia, cottagecore, springtime aesthetic, I want to give one last shout out into my darkness, my dark academia. And the books that I'm going to mention today, I think I have 7 on this list. The books that I'm going to mention are kind of not 100% dark academia. I think that especially for people who are very committed to the aesthetic, I don't want to call them 100%. They have quite a few of the elements, and I think if you enjoy the dark academia aesthetic, these will also catch your eye. Or maybe if you aren't super into it, you think it's a little bit too much, but you also kind of like elements of it, hopefully these books will do it for you. I'm sure you can figure it out as we talk about it. You guys are smart. I don't need to walk you guys through it. I hope that you haven't heard of a few of these before, and I'm excited to talk about one of them, especially because it's the most recent read. So let's jump in. So I want to start off with a book that I think is kind of a textbook definition of a dark academia aesthetic, and that is If We Were Villains, which I've talked about before. And we actually start the book in a prison cell, or an interrogation room, where our main character has just finished his prison sentence for, I think it was like 10 or 15 years. He was in there for a while. And the detective who was in charge of his case is leaving the force. And he brings this guy in and he's like, listen, I'm leaving the force, you're leaving jail. Can you please just do me a solid and tell me what actually happened? Because even though we technically solved the case and put you in jail, the detective is like, I know you were lying the whole time. So like, please, so I can sleep at night, please tell me what happened. And so our main guy actually does. He brings the detective back to the school in which this crime happened, and we are brought back to live that time period with him. So where it takes place is we are at this conservatory, and I think there are other things that they teach there, but it's mainly focused on the arts, I believe. And this particular character and his group of, I think it's like 5 or 6 friends, they are in the theater department, and they are obsessed with Shakespeare. And in this particular year, I believe it's their last year, they have to put on 3 different plays, all of which are tragedies. And it just has all the dark academia feels, where it's very studious, you're in this kind of boarding school situation. I don't know, it just felt overall very like dark autumn. And then we have the added fun of a potential murder. Things start going a little bit crazy, where the stuff that is happening on stage and the characters that they are portraying, they start to kind of bleed into real life, and things start to get quite messy. I thought that the author did a wonderful job in making Shakespeare really accessible, because I definitely need my handheld when it comes to understanding Shakespeare, and so much of it, like even just their friendly banter, they spoke in Shakespeare. Like, they liked to quote Shakespeare to each other. It never at any point felt condescending, and I feel like dark academia really toes that line with being very judgmental and condescending. So I thought that this one was really great, and it wasn't my all-time favorite read of the year, but it gave me a lot of the vibes that I was looking for. It had a little mystery, it had a little Shakespeare. Great. So If We Were Villains is pretty much the closest we're gonna get to dark academia content in this video. So there you go. Okay, the next book I want to talk about is the book that I'm most excited to talk about. I read it most recently and it took me by complete surprise. It is Legend Born, and I have heard about this book so much. Everyone in kind of the YA fantasy community was like raving about it, saying it was amazing, but I, as usual, managed to avoid finding out what it was actually about other than the genre. So I went into it blind, and this was honestly great. It was a wonderful surprise. This takes place in present day in North Carolina, and our main girl has just lost her mother in a car accident. And during that time directly afterwards, she starts to feel like things are kind of strange in the world. But she just kind of writes that off as grief. And honestly, a lot of it very well could be. And we follow her to her early college program. She's very smart. So she's 16 and she ends up getting into this like early college thing where she is essentially living in the dorms, going to school at this university. But she's young, whatever. She's excited, things are going fine. She's still definitely grieving and working through a lot of things, but her best friend is there at school with her. She thinks things are gonna be okay, and then she just starts seeing demons, which kind of, you know, messes things up. She's at a party and she just starts seeing weird stuff and nobody else does, and she's like, this is not right. But I need to amend that. Other people do see them, but it's only the weird kids with the Welsh names. So I had no idea that this was going to be tied to King Arthur, which I was so stoked about. For me, in the beginning, reading this book, I was like, I had no idea there were so many Welsh people in North Carolina. This is interesting and odd. Turns out it does actually tie into King Arthur and Excalibur and all of this stuff. I don't want to go too far into it without spoiling it, but there is a secret society within the school that is basically in charge of fighting all of these demons, and it has a very strong tie to the Round Table and to Merlin and to King Arthur and just all of this really cool stuff that I was into when I was a kid. I really loved King Arthur when I was a kid. So to have that suddenly come back was fantastic. But what made the book so interesting is that it is present day, and it brings up some really, really important topics when it comes to race, because our main character is a Black girl and she's in the South and she's dealing with us like going to school where they still have statues of like plantation owners and all this stuff. And it just, I don't want to spoil too much, but I thought that the way that she tackled a bunch of different things was so interesting. Literally my only complaint is that the romance in it, I was kind of like, damn, that happened really fast. But also, what do I know? And I'm really excited for the second one. I think that it left us in a really good place and I want to know so much more. So yeah, I would definitely, if you are interested in, it's not necessarily mythology, right? But kind of like that sort of King Arthur fairy tale-ish, history-ish thing, but also tied very much into present day. I highly recommend it. It has, there's so much going on that I'm not even fully explaining everything that happens. I'm just really tied into the King Arthur thing right now. But really, it's a really rich story, and I hope that you read it. I really hope that you read it. Next is A Sorcery of Thorns, one of my favorite books that I read last year. And this is Dark Academia because it involves a big ass library that is sort of haunted, and I love it. Basically, our main girl, Elizabeth, is orphaned and she is raised in this library. But the library is special because this particular one houses grimoires, which are spell books that are so powerful that they are almost conscious beings. And if something bad happens to them, they become living, breathing monsters, essentially. So what this library is a place where not only are the books protected and stored for historical purposes and for like usage by the wizards, but they also keep them really safe so they don't become these demon-y creatures, right? And all Elizabeth wants to do is grow up and become one of the protectors of the library. Very early on in the story, something bad happens in the library, and for some reason, Elizabeth is charged with the crime. And so she has to be put on trial by the wizards and has to be brought to the other side of the kingdom for this trial. And the wizard who is in charge of bringing her from the library to the next place she has to go reminds me, I would just like to call him Dark Academia Howl. because that's what he is. I love him. He's got himself a little Calcifer. You know, it's great. Elizabeth is freaked the hell out because she was raised kind of like Sophie in Howl's Moving Castle to believe that wizards like ate children and, you know, stole people's hearts and used them in magic. You know, she's terrified, right? And then she has this like sassy little wizard Nathaniel come pick her up. And it's great. It's a great story. So turns out that this little tiny crime that she was accused of is part of a huge conspiracy. She's got to help. She has to help save not only the kingdom, which I suppose to most people would be the important part, she has to save the libraries, dang it. And it was just a really fun story. It was short. I think that Margaret Rogerson is really the only author I think is able to really do a standalone that both leaves me satisfied and also leaves me wanting more. She also wrote An Enchantment of Ravens. Anything by her I recommend, but A Sorcery of Thorns is a wonderful little dark academia magical library wizards and demons book. Ooh, next up, one I hope you might not have heard of is Murder on Black Swan Lane. So the reason that I think that this falls very hard into the dark academia category is it involves some alchemy. It involves some secret societies, some Victorian London. It's kind of like a retelling of a Sherlock Holmes story, and I had a good time with it. I didn't read the sequel, but I did enjoy the first one of the series. And we have one main character who is very much the embodiment of Sherlock Holmes. He's kind of not a super nice guy, but he's also really rich, really smart, and he's a part of kind of high society in London. And then our Watson kind of character I think is a really fun character, and she is essentially kind of like a gossip columnist. She draws all of the political cartoons and all of the cartoons within the society papers, which was a huge thing back then when they didn't have, you know, the photography that we have at the time. Pretty much everything was shown through cartoon. So she's really an important figure in London, kind of the underbelly of London society, right? When there is a crime committed and our buddy Sherlock is kind of framed for it, nobody is going to help him. He figures, I'm gonna help myself. I'm gonna solve this mystery myself. So he needs someone not only involved in kind of high society and has his hands kind of in that pot, but he needs someone who knows all the gossip, someone who has all the connections, who knows everything about everything. And who is that? This girl, our gossip columnist who has ties to everyone and anyone. You know, the walls all have ears. So they kind of work together to solve this very interesting murder that, like I said, involves alchemy and secret societies and very dark academia-esque topics. So if you're looking for a little mystery that takes place on dark, foggy London streets in the 1800s, I would definitely give this one a go. Murder on Black Swan Lane. Okay, I'm gonna try and be calm when I talk about Tana French. I love Tana French. She is a thriller mystery writer who her mysteries mainly take place in Ireland, more specifically in Dublin, because she has this series called the Dublin Murder Squad or the Dublin Detective Squad. You'd think for how much I love this series I would remember its name, but I don't. So anyway, the thing that I really love about this series is they are all pretty much standalones. I think that there are 6 books in this series, and you can totally read them out of order. It's not a huge deal. Some characters come and go, but it's not, you don't really need to know their backstory, etc. So I'm going to actually recommend, I believe it's the second one in the series, but it is called The Likeness. And this particular book has the strongest Agatha Christie feels because a little bit of it is sort of unbelievable. But we're gonna stretch our imagination for the sake of murder, right? There is, of course, a murder. We find that a young girl has been killed and we don't know anything about her. It's really difficult to find any family, any education. She's just kind of like there. We know her name, maybe. The only thing we really know about her, like solid fact, is that she lives in this house with a group of 4 or 5 other friends. And they are all students and they basically just live together, study together. They don't really have that much communication with the outside world. They just sit in their home and talk about history and literature. That's all they do. So that's where I kind of get this dark academia feel from. They're definitely that kind of group, right? The thing that the friends don't know is that their friend has actually died. They think that she's still in the hospital recovering and they can't see her. So this is where it gets a little bit unbelievable. The detective who has been assigned to the case happens to be a dead ringer, no pun intended, for the dead girl. She is her doppelganger. They look uncannily alike. So the detective squad decides, you know, we don't have any leads. We have no clues. Why don't we try something potentially illegal? So what they do is they send this detective back to the house to replace this girl. And she's basically there to observe and pretend that she is the friend who is just suffering from amnesia. So she kind of like interviews and starts to understand this very strange friendship in this household, the weird power dynamic, stuff like that. It's very eerie. Tana French can write in a way where you really feel like you're in the scene. So while I was reading it, I was so nervous. Like I thought that I was gonna make a mistake and the people were gonna realize that I wasn't who I said I was and stuff like that. It's a very good book. So if you're looking for more of a thriller that's kind of uneasy, you know, I recommend all of Tana French, but specifically The Likeness, I think calls out to my fans of dark academia. Another book that I talk about a lot, and I'm not going to stop talking about it until you've all read it, so read it, is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. This book follows one particular girl whose parents are researchers / professors, and her mom has kind of mysteriously disappeared. We believe that she's dead, but it's kind of unclear in the book. And her father is still a researcher, so a lot of her life is kind of moving with him to different educational hubs, I suppose. And we mostly know her as living in Amsterdam. But during the course of the book, her father has to go on this kind of research trip and he decides to take her along. So a lot of the book is us going with them through kind of like Eastern Europe. I believe they go to Turkey, and then a lot of like Romania and stuff like that, because what her father and mother researched was Dracula. More specifically, the man who Dracula is based off of. So it's a lot of being in old libraries and creepy castles and like all these underground catacombs and tombs and stuff. But the other half, we actually go back in time and follow her parents and why they're studying this. And it kind of gets really creepy from there. You kind of realize that the guy that Dracula is based off of, it might not be as fiction as we think. It has a lot of those elements as well, not only libraries and castles, but also it has a lot of vampires and mythology and scary stuff like that. So I just thought it was excellent. It's got train travel through Europe, all the stuff that I love. So yes, The Historian, I beg you to read it. And last but not least, this one is definitely very dark in dark academia. This is actually a book that scared me to the point where there were like jump scares in the book. So fair warning if you aren't into kind of horror, but I want to talk about The Silent Companions. So this is very much like a Victorian Gothic horror story, and it is just delightful in the sense that you are terrified throughout the whole book. So we follow this woman who was recently widowed, and she was kind of, her husband dies as they're moving into his town. They are newlyweds and they're moving into his kind of family ancestral home. I believe he like went ahead to get the place ready for him and their child. And then he mysteriously dies. So she's kind of left all alone. She, you know, in that time, a married woman didn't really have a lot of power. So all of a sudden her husband is gone. She's just like, okay, you know, like she still has to go through with this. She still has to live in this house, but like she doesn't understand anything. It's not her family home. The town surrounding it, they are very scared of her and like don't seem to like her. It's all very creepy, especially when we start to notice things in the house moving around, doing weird things. It becomes very much a horror story, this kind of haunted house. Like I said, it's very Victorian, very gothic. It feels very dark and spooky in this old home. So if you want to get one more scary book in until like it's all sunshine and rainbows in the springtime, definitely read Silent Companions. But like I said, be prepared, because I thought it has there's something to do with dolls, I would say. And I've never been scared of that. Like Annabelle, Chucky, doesn't scare me. This book got me. This book was quite scary. Proceed with caution is all I can say. And so those are a few of my dark academia books before I dive into a little bit lighter content. It is actually our first kind of spring day here in Seoul, which I'm really excited about. I'm excited to do more reading vlogs outside, enjoying the sunshine. We've got about a week until cherry blossom season. If you're interested in cherry blossom season, I will be doing a couple of vlogs on my main channel if you want to see that. I already miss autumn. Is that true? Like, I'm happy that winter is over, but I just want autumn to be here. Is that too much to ask? Just like a perennial autumn. Anyway, so I'm going to leave you here. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you have any possibly dark academia books, ones that you think are close but not quite, definitely leave them down below. I love that aesthetic. I love autumn and darkness and libraries and studying and all that good stuff. So help a girl out and add to my TBR, please. And also please check out Legendborn. Really, it took me by surprise. I knew people were raving about it, but I can't wait for the sequel. Like, I'm so stoked for the sequel. So if you haven't picked that up yet, I think it was worth the hype. So please go read that. Enjoy. I am going to head out now. I'm actually going to go for a walk. It's beautiful outside. So I will see you guys next time. Thanks as always. If you have any video ideas as we are entering a new season, let me know. I'm always doing my monthly reading wrap-ups, but I would love to hear what you would like in between as far as content goes. So yeah, I will see you guys then next time, next Friday, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Okay, bye.